Rachel Marshall on the King stage today. I cannot tell you how excited I am. I had to hurry up quick and hit the record button because we were talking so much good stuff. I'm like, wait. Let me hit the record button. But Rachel, thanks so much for being here. Driven to Win Nation is absolutely honored to host you. And we're going to dive into all kinds of stuff today, but thank you for being here.
Awesome. Chaz, I'm so glad to be having this conversation with you today. Thanks so much.
Yeah, I was just on your show a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month or so ago, and we
Yep.
got to talk winning in all areas and gathering the king stuff. And today we get to kind of flip the script a little bit, talk family and legacy and all of just the expertise that you bring to this concept of legacy living and this generational system that you've really created for high performers. And I think that everybody listening today should take some notes because we say as entrepreneurs we're doing it for our family. At least most of the people listening to Driven to Win are doing it for their family. But then there's just so many things that we either don't do or forget to do or don't know to do that actually
Mhm.
sets up everything for our family. And so we want to dive into that. Before I do, though, we were kind of just riffing on tariffs and the thing happening in our country right now, and not so much tariffs because I actually know that you just did a show on this. And so for those of you that want to go check out more information on Rachel's podcast, we'll put that in the show notes as well. She just did a show on tariffs, but really what we were talking about was this amazing like mind warp that we can get stuck in sometimes when tariffs, or I was giving the example of many years ago, the opposite was happening. You know, Barack Obama was becoming president and the right was flipping out. And I was starting multiple businesses and buying multiple businesses and becoming a millionaire during that time. And the mindset of it actually has nothing to do with any of that. What does it have to do with, Rachel?
Oh my goodness, Chaz, I just love that you started here because it is all about mindset. It's all about mindset and what really you believe, what you speak into existence, the people you surround yourself with, having a mindset of clarity and confidence to make decisions despite what's going on. I mean, that is really the mindset of a king or the mindset of a
Yeah.
winner. It's the ability to not blame the economy, not blame tariffs, not blame the stock market, not blame interest rates, not blame the mortgage system or
Right.
inflation. Really, you're not blaming any of that. And you're just saying, what can I do to take ownership and to take
Yeah.
responsibility and really to set up a system? I love that you started with systems. Set up a system to thrive in as many environments as possible.
Yeah. You said a few minutes ago when we were just riffing back and forth, you said that good decisions don't come out of fear. And so when
Mhm.
we're operating in fear, how many times can we look back and go, oh, yeah, I was in fear and I made a great decision? Usually it's quite the opposite. And you gave some examples. You're like, no, think about COVID, think about these other scenarios, economy wise, or even just in your own family. It's like when you're in fear, when you're in that flight or fight mode, sure, maybe some action is taken typically by, us action takers, entrepreneurs, and people trying to problem solve. But, but when we think through the lens of fear, like zero chance good decisions are being made. But you've seen this from like a family dynamic. Talk about just this fear and bad decisions or even good decisions, how this works in your work.
Oh my goodness. I think it's so interesting because, I'm sure many of your people are in the marketing space as well, and you can hear this marketing concept of either speaking to the fear or speaking to the thing that somebody wants. And I think the
Right.
the crazy part about that all the news media has, really capitalized on is the fact that people can be so driven by fear.
Yeah.
We have fear of missing out. We have fear of not having the thing that everyone else says that we need. We have fear of being a failure. We have fear of our kids screwing up. We have fear of doing things wrong and causing our kids to screw up. I mean, there's just so many components of this that when you look through the layers of all of that, really, we need to be able to get to the core of saying, what do I actually want?
Yeah.
What is that thing that I am reaching for and going towards? Because that is what's going to allow you to pull out of that fear and
Yeah.
instead begin to pursue the right things in the right order, put the right systems in place. I was listening to Myron Golden just real
Mhm.
quick this morning, and he was talking about having systems. It's not so much just working or trading time for money and figuring out how I can work more. It's really how do I create systems that continue to pay me. So I'm going to keep coming back to that word systems. It's really hot on the press on my mind this morning, but I love how
Yeah.
you're talking about that fear component. Fear can start a good decision.
Sure.
Fear can, I mean, if you at least listen to the dangers, I mean, there are a lot of dangers out there. We have to be aware of
Yeah.
them. You can't be naive to the fact that,
Right.
there's negative messages that are coming for you, that are coming for your kids. There's a
Right.
world that we live in that, sure, there are dangers abounding. But at the same time, what we want to do is be able to say, how can I be in a position to see where I want to go? I think of Peter walking on the water. And as
Yeah.
soon as he started looking in fear at the waves and all the stuff around him, he started
Faith goes away.
sinking. Yeah. He needed to be able to keep his eyes on the prize. He needed to keep his eyes on Jesus. He needed to be in a position of faith, not fear of all of the circumstances around him.
Yeah, I think that's a great example. Talking to a couple of guys, oh, maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, and we were talking about this concept of either, running from something or running towards something.
Mm.
And, even as a marketer, like at this point, I've done quite a bit in my individual businesses. I've worked with some pretty cool names when it comes to marketing, and I see how the majority of gurus, if you will, move the masses with fear. Like
Mhm.
it's just marketing, right? And because 80, maybe even 90% of people will move, they'll take action because of fear as opposed to the thing that they want. And so I'm talking about this, and it's something that I've had to like really work the muscle on because it doesn't actually feel good to me to put out a fear-based thing to get people to move. It just doesn't even feel right to me, you know?
Mhm.
And so the kind of the purpose of the conversation is we were talking about creating a marketing strategy that fit that drive in me, which is not necessarily to move people negatively, but to pull them into who they're meant to be. And how, okay, sure, maybe I'm going to be missing out on a bunch of people, but like, won't I get the right ones? Because
Chaz,
even for
that's
me, I'm like,
exactly what we said in our work.
right?
Yeah,
This
that's
is
awesome.
you guys are obviously, what I would say is leaning towards the thing that you want as well. You guys obviously share that mindset. Your work with entrepreneurs and developing, a 7 generation strategy or a system is very forward thinking. It's not really running from fear, although I'm sure we could probably put some fear based things in there. And if you don't do this, then X happens to your kids. And if you don't do this, X happens to your wife or, whatever. But it's like, no, actually, the message, at least that connects for me, is, oh no, look at what I get to build for
Hmm.
generations that won't even know me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
How does that work for you?
Okay, so I'm gonna just back up and tell a little bit of my story. So I had a near-death experience, and that was something that had the potential to move myself and my family towards a tremendous amount of fear.
Yeah.
Because most people, I guess I was 34 when it happened. I had just delivered our second daughter, and I ended up waking up in the ICU wondering what had just happened and
Yeah.
realizing that I had been on the brink of death. And when we came out of that situation, we really started looking at, okay, first of all, what happens if we're not here? How do we take
Yeah.
care of the kids? So that was towards fear based.
Yeah. Yeah.
But really quickly, we had to say, okay, we want to take care of our kids as best as possible, not just financially and not just giving them the estate plan with the trusts and everything. We wanted to say, how do we ensure that they become who they're meant to be?
Yeah.
And they have the opportunity that we would have created for them. And we realized that we had to shift the lens. We had to stop looking at what the negatives were or the potential pitfalls or the trenches, the ditches that we could fall into if we didn't do things right. And instead, we
Right.
had to say, okay, but what if we did live to 120 years old? And so did our kids. I say to every single person I talk to, I hope you live to be 120 years old.
Yeah.
Now, if you do, and your kids live that long, they're going to probably be 90 or so before you pass away. What would you choose to create with them if you had that opportunity? What
Yeah.
messages would you instill in them? What lessons would you teach? What wisdom would you gain? What would you be unafraid to pursue? What
Yeah.
would you teach them so that they didn't have to go figure it out on their own? And what would you build together?
Yeah.
And from that perspective, we said, okay, we might not have all the way till 120 years, but we can live as if. And we
Yeah.
can write that story before we live into it, because what I do know is that the clearer the vision you have, so without a vision, the people perish. That's the negative side, right? But with
Right.
a vision, then what do? That's the opposite. You're going to
Yeah.
thrive. You're going to succeed. You're going to accomplish. You're going to win. So if you're in a position of being really clear on the vision, like Habakkuk 2:2 says, write down the vision, make it plain so that the reader may run with it. You're in a position of being able to cast this vision that's so clear and compelling that then you can bring others along with you. And in our perspective, that was bringing our kids along with us and figuring out how do we not just live a life that we are proud of, but how do
Yeah.
we raise our kids to be the parents of our grandchildren? And
Right.
how do we infuse in them, in our children, the ability and the desire to become producers and
Yeah.
creators who train their children? So trainers who train, or teachers who teach, or disciples who disciple. And how do
Yeah.
we reproduce that in them? How do we make sure that we write it down in case we don't have that track record or that running track ahead of us, that runway
Yeah.
to be able to do it with them? And so that's where the book came from. That's where Seven Generations Legacy was born. And really, this was the whole idea. The seven generations, specifically, that word, that language, came from the ancient Iroquois, who, before tribal councils, they would think about and they would talk about how do we make decisions that will benefit and improve the lives of our children, our grandchildren, our great, 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 great grandchildren, seven generations ahead. That's so large. That's so forward thinking. That's so selfless
Yeah.
because you're not necessarily going to reap the rewards of that. What if you have to make decisions today that
Yeah.
have challenges or look to be difficult, but you
Yeah.
make the hard decision that's actually better for them?
Yeah, this resonates with our audience. We've pressed hard into this family concept the last probably 2 years, and pressing hard on raising up kids. And we've got our Generation Next program now for kids.
I
And
love that.
yeah, it's a joy, obviously, to be able to partake in that. But what we get to see are entrepreneurs who are doing exactly what you said, which is okay. Someone has to be the chain breaker.
Mm-hmm.
Someone has to be the person to take the risk, to lay it all down. Good. That'll be me. And most of us along the way, are like we'll experience a nice life, sure. But the people that I run with, the people that are most likely in our circle or in our mastermind community, they're way more interested in creating an experience for the ones that are around them, their community even, but of course their family and future family, than their personal pleasure.
Mm.
And I don't know what's unique about that, or like why that resonates with people like us so much. But what you were just talking about, to some people, like, ugh, like you want me to make a decision that like harms me or isn't as good for me, but it's better who are they? They're not going to remember me anyway. What does it matter? They can make their own money. And that is just so far from how I'm wired and how I would consider a king to be wired, because we are responsible. And I've said that I'm responsible for the next 100 years. It's like, okay, well, I don't know if that fits my grandkids, my great grandkids, but man, the next 100 years are on me, on my shoulders. And let's do this thing. And so let's talk from a systematic perspective. I had you come in to our Wealth Builder group. We were in Cabo, Mexico back in January, and you came in and developed a couple of things for the families that were there. One thing that you said, though, that was just absolutely mind blowing to me. It was so simple. You probably don't even know what you said. Maybe you say it all the time. I don't know. But I've quoted you many times since then and said that it's not about getting it to the next generation, but through the next generation. What does that mean to you and to the clients that you're working with, the people that are like us that are making decisions today on behalf of our kids, grandkids, great grandkids?
Ah, Chaz. Okay, so I know why we resonate so much. I think it's okay. I'm going to go back. I'm going to make sure I take a note so I don't forget where I'm going here. But the whole idea that you just said, being that person who's willing to accept responsibility, I think
Yeah.
that is challenging. And it's especially challenging in our world that says, you are the center of the universe and your kids are the center of the universe, and you're doing things to drive towards happiness, which is kind of a short-term thinking. We have a lot of short-term thinking in
Yeah.
our minds. I don't know where that comes from specifically. I mean, I can speculate and I could say, well, maybe if we're not living with God at the center of our world, then we do become short-term thinkers, because if we're in a secular mindset, then I only can see the span of my life and things seem random and by chance and don't really have meaning and don't really matter. I mean, I think maybe that's partially at the root, but I think when you are talking to people who are willing to accept responsibility, I think that really differentiates people who can ultimately create success and people who continue just trying and maybe reaching for things, but not actually accomplishing them. And
Yeah.
when I hear that, I think there's something so crucial about being willing to take that responsibility. So
Yeah.
let's go ahead and talk about that getting wealth to your kids or wealth getting through your kids. This idea really comes from this, I think it's Proverbs 13:26. I hope I'm not misquoting 22. It's somewhere in there. Um, but a wise man leaves an inheritance to his children's children.
Yeah.
So it doesn't say to his children, which is interesting. Why didn't he just say to his children? Okay, so Solomon, wisest man who ever lived, is saying a wise man leaves an inheritance to his children's children. Well, you can think about how do you do that? Well, you could say, oh, I have X dollars, X number of dollars, and I need Y dollars, and my kids need Z dollars. I mean, I don't know if I'm mathematically or algebraically working this
Yeah.
out correctly, but
Yeah.
if I maybe what I need is A and what my kids need is B and what my grandkids need is C, well then I have to
Mhm.
create an amount of wealth that covers all three of those, and it's an additional type of concept. But I don't
Yeah.
think that's what he's getting at because we have seen through generations and through cultures throughout time in history that just because a family creates wealth does not mean they keep it in the family.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, you can look at example after example after example, but most people, Vanderbilts would be one key example that I talk about often,
Right.
where you have wealth lost after having more wealth than the US Treasury, known as the world's richest man, and then having multiple generations later not even having a millionaire in the family.
Yeah.
And when you look at a story like that, you realize, well, it can't be just cumulative in terms of addition. I had plenty of money, and so I could have paid for all of the needs of generation A and B and C. Therefore, that's how I leave an inheritance to my children's children. It cannot be that simple because there's no volume of dollars that solve that issue of keeping wealth in the family. And so when you look at that, you realize I can't just live as well as I want to live and have as much as I need during my lifetime and then get it to my kids and wash my hands and say whatever they do with it, they do with it. If they spend it, they spend it. If they do something with it, they do something with it. If they make something of themselves, great. If they become dependent and lazy, then
Right.
so be it. If I wash my hands of that responsibility, I haven't taken the responsibility to get wealth to my children's children.
Yeah.
And so, in order to truly benefit the grandchildren, you almost have to look at that next generation as a conduit to get to them. And
Yeah.
how do you have a conduit but something that goes through? It can't just be a stopping ending point. It can't just be, I got it to them. What's their problem? How come they didn't get it to the next generation? You realize that it's a training issue, it's a stewardship issue, it's a
Yeah.
passing on a mindset
Yeah.
of responsibility and
Yeah.
ownership so that they can then become the trainer who trains their children.
Yeah.
Because the truth is, Chaz, that if I'm going to create generational wealth, I have to see myself as generation one, even if I've received an inheritance or I have
Right.
land from my grandfather or my great grandfather. I need to see myself as in the driver's seat. I need to
Right.
see that responsibility as generation one resting on me to create something for generation two and generation three behind me. And guess
Yeah.
what? My kids have to see themselves as generation one all over again, which means they can't just be receiving and eating from this seed that
Right.
we provide to them.
Yeah.
They need to plant that seed and allow
Right.
it to grow and allow it to flourish so that they can give seed to their children and have that continue to flourish and grow.
I was talking to my 11-year-old daughter. This was probably 2 months ago, and she came upstairs one early morning, and I'm sitting before my dream board and doing some visualization work, and she was asking me about a few things that were on there, and one of which was a specific amount of money that I've gotten listed up there. It's a pretty large amount, and she was asking me about like why is it there and how much is that, and I was like, well, so here's the deal. I'm pretty confident I can accumulate that number in my lifetime. But worst case scenario, you guys will know how to finish the task, right, of
Mm.
accumulating that. So sometime before you pass, that number will be in our family office. And then she's like, well, what's the family office? I'm like, well, it won't just be about accumulating that number. It'll continue on, right? Like your responsibility with whatever it is that I leave you will be to make it grow, and that stewardship, and that led to that conversation, and obviously planting seeds, and so here's my 11-year-old who doesn't fully understand, but she's got a really good understanding as a firstborn, just they
Yeah.
kind of just are whippy. And she's like, okay, like I kind of get it. Like this isn't just a dollar amount. This is like what we're doing with it. And that's what it is. It's not
Mm.
specifically this number. The number actually means nothing, right? Whether we accomplish this or not, who cares, right?
Hmm.
There's just a big enough number to keep us interested, to like keep us driving and focused on purpose and being intentional throughout our life. And then it's not just about Chaz or Daddy. It's about, okay, for a little while longer, it's going to be just me. But then here in a little bit, you guys get to help me. And then
Hmm.
together we'll do this thing for a while. And then for a short little bit, it'll be me, you, and your kids doing this together for a little while. And then it'll be, I'll have to take a break and you guys will be together. And then, God willing, you get to do it with your kids and your grandkids. And it's just this game that we get to keep playing. And she was just like all fired up about wealth building and multiple generations. And it's like, who does this with an 11-year-old? It's like, no, 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 stop, stop, stop. People like us do
Yeah.
this with 11-year-olds,
Yes.
because it's real. Yeah. And so, yeah, your clients I know range from, business owners to just high net worth individuals, but I believe that they're probably all coming to you for a specific reason. What is
Yeah.
that?
What's so interesting, this comes back to that fear and faith thing. It's so, so interesting that I think that even those who have created something very substantial in their lifetime, there's still some fears that they're trying to figure out how to solve. And so what we see people who are really trying to solve is, or did I say people are trying to solve? The challenge that people are trying to solve is twofold. Really, how do I take what I've built and how do I ensure my kids know about it, know what to do with it, and are equipped to be able to handle that shift of the mantle, that transition that you're talking about when it's no longer fully on my shoulders of generation one anymore, and now it's going to be on their shoulders. I want them to know what to do with it. And sometimes I talk to people at all stages of life. So sometimes somebody's coming to this realization and their kids are already in their 30s and they maybe haven't prepared them well. And maybe their
Yeah.
kids don't understand the full extent of the wealth that they've built.
Yeah.
And that can be difficult. But there's never a point that's too late to look back and figure out
Yeah.
how do I do this transition well? How do I prepare for this transition, knowing that we don't know when that's going to occur? But
Right.
how do we prepare for that transition? Really, again, for two reasons. One, so we don't cause problems in the family. And two, so we don't cause problems with the money.
Yeah.
So problems in the family look like, sibling rivalry, squandering money, but fighting over things,
Right.
lawsuits, all that like, well, I thought this, I thought we were going to keep the property. Well, now you want to sell the property. Disputes about what is going to happen with assets, with land, with businesses, with a lack of an off ramp or a lack of an exit strategy
Yeah.
or a transition strategy to transition that to the second generation, or at least an invitation to the second generation to participate in the ownership of
Yeah.
family assets. So that's on the family side. And then you see on the money side, things just being eaten up or used up. And really, I think that kind of core thing in the soul, in the heart of every entrepreneur, business owner who has built something substantial, they say, I've put myself on the line. I've sacrificed a lot to do this. I've chosen to do the hard thing over the easy thing. I've chosen to make a lot of difficult decisions. I've built this and I'm proud of it and I want it to benefit my kids and my grandkids and my great
Yeah.
grandkids. And I don't want it to be for nothing. Because I think if it is just for us, that feels kind of empty.
Yeah.
It feels like if it's not going to continue, if it's not going to continue blessing the world and staying in operation, and maybe that's not the dreams. I mean, some people want to exit the business and they want to ensure the money benefits the family. Some people want to keep the businesses or business in the family. Some people want to keep
Yeah.
properties in the family. But ultimately, it comes down to saying, how do I make sure the money can bless the family? And how do I make sure the family is equipped to continue building more wealth?
Hey, Kings and Queens, Chaz Wolf. I want to talk to you about something that's super important to me. We put a lot of time and effort, we meaning myself and my team, into this podcast, into the content that goes out every single day. And if you have been getting any sort of value or insight from this, we want it to be able to reach other business owners too. So we would love if you would like, comment, share, leave a review, post, share again, all of the things on social media, on all the different platforms, or even on the podcast mediums of Apple and Spotify. We would love to be able to get our content into more hands, more entrepreneurs, so they can grow their business as quick as possible. Together, we are building a community of like-minded entrepreneurs who are committed to growing their businesses to new heights. So let's do this. Let's help each other grow.
As I'm hearing you talk, I'm thinking some rather difficult choices, and planning ahead for some of those things so the ripples that you're talking about don't happen, or at least maybe a little smoother. But all of this is like, I gotta like think about this and work through this. And I can't imagine that your clients are just super excited to like, it's like the business owners that go into business together and that don't think about the exit. It's like, no. How many times have I on this exact podcast talked to a business owner that's like, yeah, my original partnership didn't go right and bummer. And so that story is like, okay, what's the learning lesson? It's like, well, if I had known what I know now, I would have made some things ahead of time in the agreement, or I would have not partnered at all. Okay, fine. But like, if I'm going to partner with someone, we're going to have it all spelled out. So that way, when those things happen, it's clear. So it's like, we know this. Like the listener right now is hearing you going, yeah. But then they like shy away from actually taking action towards it. What do you do to kind of maybe ease the blow or
Yeah.
get in the mode of thinking like, no, actually, this is really important. We can't just go, yeah, and then turn off the podcast. We need to like hear it and then take action because it's that important.
Oh, Chaz, I mean, you've hit the nail on the head to exactly why some people don't ever make progress with this and the exact reason why we've done everything that we do on the legacy planning side of our work. And so I hear from people so often that it's really important to them to make sure that these problems don't besiege their family and their wealth after they're gone. And yet, one thing can really keep people from doing that. It's just being really, really busy. Trying to handle all the stuff in life right now. Sometimes that just clouds up our ability to really make long range decisions.
Yeah.
So part of that is stepping outside of business and working on the business. I know that you probably talk about this till you're blue in the face. I know you guys do EOS and just all of the business planning. I think just taking time to work on the business is the same thing as taking time out of the family to work on the family, to put those plans in place, to put the systems in place. So part of that is just being able to be willing to step outside of the hustle and bustle and the daily grind to realize that it's really not that much of a grind that we make it out to be sometimes, and that we really need to have that strategic planning. But somebody who's already in the position of saying strategic planning, I think the challenge can really be, okay, Rachel, you're talking about this like gigantic theoretical concept.
Right.
It's philosophical. How do you actually put feet on this? How is there teeth to it? I mean, really, what does this even mean? And I think the challenge can be, I have no idea where to start. That's really
Right.
kind of what I talk to people who end up working with us in our high level services. So
Yeah.
the challenge is they're often doing a lot of the steps. They're doing this over here, they're doing this over here, and I'll talk to that in just a second. But they're not feeling like they still have a big picture of everything working together the way that it
Sure.
should.
Yeah.
And so I think really the reason for that is that, first of all, a lot of people look at just the money and they say, well, if I just solve all the money problems, if I have
Check.
plenty of
I'm good.
money, I've got the financial plan, I've got the
Right.
insurance, I'm, doing the tax planning, I've got, my liability coverage is good, I'm not leaking money in too many places,
Right.
I've got the money handled. So I'm optimizing my money. Now that's a huge step in and of itself. And I think even that can be intimidating to somebody who is saying, I think I'm doing everything right, but I still need to be able to, step into that position of humility and recognize what I don't know in order to be able to get help to optimize that. So that's a huge step to begin with. And so
Right.
anyone who's making those steps, that's huge. but it's not enough. So the next step is then a lot of people will say, okay, well, now I need to do the estate planning. And now when I say estate planning, there can be an estate plan with a trust and a will and a healthcare power of attorney and a medical directive. And that's like this tight package that's an estate plan. Many people we talk to need a lot more than just an estate plan. They might have multiple trusts and multiple entities and LLCs and S corps and different ownership structures over different ones and holding
Right.
companies. They might need a lot more than just an estate plan. But when you look at all of that, that's called the legal component. I call it
Yeah.
the structure or the mechanism to be able to
Okay.
pass wealth. And that can be intimidating,
Yeah.
especially because, well, what am I going to have to do? I'm going to have to sit in front of an attorney. They're going to ask me questions. I'm probably not going to know the answers to those questions. I'm going to look dumb. Then I'm going to be told, okay, this is what I should probably do. I'm going to say, all right, let's do it. And hopefully it all works out.
Yeah.
And that can be frustrating. And especially, I mean, I talk to attorneys all the time. I'm not an attorney personally, but I know that they say no one wants to talk to them because they charge them money for every single conversation you have. So it's not a pleasant environment to go into, especially if you don't know what you really want. And then how are you
Right.
going to find the right attorney? How do you know you're getting the right plan? How do you know it's going to actually work the way you want it to? So
Right.
that's intimidating. But there's more. And this is the thing that most people miss, but it's also the first step to making sure everything else falls into place.
Okay.
And the challenge with all of that is that most people don't see this. And that's why they miss the whole step. And that's why whenever you don't have clarity on something,
Right.
you can't have confidence. And if you
That's
don't
right.
have confidence, you can't take steps forward. And if you don't take steps forward, you're never going to get the big picture because you haven't started at all.
Yeah.
So the big picture is really to look at the meaning of all of the legal planning, the meaning of the money, and really get clear on what actually is the legacy that you want to pass on.
Yeah.
The values, the ideals, the family mission, the family vision. That's just the start. But when you get really clear on what it is that you actually want to create, which is not just a dollar amount, exactly as you were talking about with your 11-year-old daughter. I love that story. I love that she's engaged and she's wanting to participate in this. And she's like, yes, I'm catching the vision because you cast it really well, Chaz. And when you're in that position of realizing, okay, it's not about the dollar amount, it's what it can do. It's what we can
Yeah.
do with it. It's how it's going to benefit our family. It's what our family can accomplish together. It's how we're going to act together. It's how we're going to spend time together. It's what we're going to build together.
Yeah.
That is the real legacy.
Yeah.
So we get really clear on that, the meaning that we want everything else to do. And when you get really clear on the meaning, what's really amazing, we had a client who went through this process say that it removed the decision-making fatigue of all the
Yeah.
other decisions because they did some hard work up front and
Yeah.
everything else was easy.
Yeah.
They got really clear on what they wanted and needed. And so you start with what you want. Then you build that into your family culture. Then you get into a position where we talk about love letters and writing a letter to your kids and your grandkids, really to communicate that meaning to them.
Yeah.
Then that meaning is clear. Now that's preparing you for an ideal conversation with the attorney who does often estate planning, can be asset protection, might even be tax planning. You're in a position that you know what you want because you know why you want it.
Yeah.
And then you're able to optimize the money side of things because now you're not just thinking for yourself in one generation, but you're thinking about how to have generational assets and how to have something that will continue to benefit the family that they can all tap into. That's not just money that you can hand to them, but it's
Yeah.
this opportunity for them to participate and gain this training wheel type of thinking where they can
Right.
start taking responsibility and grow into the responsibility they'll need to handle the whole family enterprise.
Yeah, I love that. We obviously the time that you spent with us in Cabo, we did a few of these steps, and I'd be curious if you wanted to share your steps. But the idea of sitting down, family mission, family values is so like, oh yeah, yeah, we've done that, and it's like, no, 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 no. It's this is not just a like an afterthought, like, oh sure, like integrity and do what you say. Like, okay, those might be your values, but come on, like, let's put some meat to the bone, just like you do with your companies. I've helped many companies create core values, and again, a lot of times they have like we just did this past week with one of our clients. They had sat down a year or maybe a year and a half ago and created their core values, and it was integrity, teamwork, all the blah answers, and it was like cool, like okay, let's put them up on the board, and then let's like, because where are they, right? Do you use these in your language? No. Are they up on the wall anywhere? No. We did make a poster once, like
Hmm.
they don't mean anything.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. So why don't we create some things that actually are our language and they mean something to us? Yeah. And so that concept in business is like, oh, sure. Like, yeah, we should do that. We have company culture and all these things. But when you translate that over to the family, it's like, oh, yeah. Why haven't I done that? Why
Mm.
aren't I working on that? And you want to talk about clarity. Julie and I had actually sat down way before I met you and had kind of drawn some stuff out. But I'll tell you what, the way that when we sat down with you guys and walked through your little process, it was like, okay, no, actually, this is why we exist. This mission right here, this is the wolf thing. This is what we're after. That's super cool. Okay, and so then what are the characteristics of us and our children in order to be able to help us achieve that mission? And then boom, our family values. And it's like, okay, cool. Like this is actually sticky now. And
Yeah.
so I know that there's several other steps in your system, but this idea of passing it through, not just to, it has a lot to do with the prep work that you're talking about. And you said it was hard, or at least your other client said it was hard. I didn't actually find it hard. I found it's the slow down to speed up, right? It's the
Yes.
NASCAR pit stop. Like we as entrepreneurs, we just keep going, right? We've got this unbelievable resilience and commitment to just going, which a lot of times translates to being busy, like you said. And so the person that's listening right now, I'd love for you to maybe share what that system looks like if you want to, but more so the mindset of like, okay, I know this is important. I know I need to pull off and get some new tires and an oil change, but like I just want to go another lap, and I just want to go another
Hmm.
lap, and I just want to go another lap until what happens? Well, the car poots out and now you can't even race anymore. You can't finish, right?
Yeah, Chaz, you said so much in there. I'm like, I could grab out probably like 100 different ideas to unpack just from what you last said. But I think what's really important is that I equate doing this work to working out. I mean, if you're in a workout and you're in that position where you're trying to push the limit on what you've done before, whether it's weightlifting, whether it's running, whether it's PRing in something and you're trying to just beat your time, you're running faster than you ever ran before, or you're doing more lifts or more reps, or you're lifting more. Whenever you're in a position that you're pushing, it doesn't feel comfortable at that time.
Sure.
But the benefit comes later. The
Later.
benefit
Yeah.
comes after you chose to do the work. And so, what's really interesting about everything that you just mentioned, why there's a difference between, oh, yeah, yeah, I did my values, and no, this is really what it means to do your
Yeah.
values. I think,
This is how we're going to move
yeah,
as a unit.
yes. I think there's so much to that. So one is we think really highly. Well, I don't know if I should, I might not even stand by that statement. I was going to say in America, we think highly of business. Well, there's a lot of, opposition towards business ownership as well. But
Sure. Yeah.
uh, we do think, though, when we're in business or in a company culture, we think, oh, yeah, culture is a great thing. I need to be able to have a great culture. You work for a boss, you don't really work for a company.
Right.
People leave people, they don't really leave organizations. And so you look at all of that and you say, okay, yeah, it's really important to have a good team, a good morale. You've got something that you feel value at, like that you're part of this bigger thing. You feel good about your contribution in order to stay at a company. We do a lot of work around that for retention, for lowering the cost of training and development, all of that. But then when we look on the family side, we're like, well, what is family? Well, my kids have my DNA and they live in the same house. But our culture has so fragmented even the concept of family that it's not even necessarily mom, dad, and kids. It's not even by blood. Family is expendable. And, we can just walk away from this family whenever we choose to. And then we've got kids that fly the nest and go start their own family. And what that leaves us with such an empty definition of family at all, that why would we spend time on thinking about where it's going, where we came from, and why we should be strong together? Because
Hmm.
there's not a value on family. But if we can recognize that hyper individualistic side of our culture that just puts so much on me and myself and my own ambitions, if instead we can look at God as a generational God and family matters. And if you know your roots and where you came from, you're going to be able, and you honor those roots, and you're then in a position of being able to create something that generations after you can look back on you and remember you. But it really starts with recognizing there's value in this family line. There's value in building something that your kids and grandkids can benefit from. And that comes from not just looking at the family as this, kind of empty, yeah, we live together until the kids are grown and then they leave and that's not family anymore. And, that's not going to create the gravity of really doing the work of family mission and vision and values. So when you then recognize there's value to where we're going, I want my kids and grandkids and my great grandkids to be able to look back and say, not only do I know my great grandma or grandpa, but I'm benefiting from them. And they
Yeah.
did these things with me in mind. They built this with me in mind, even though they didn't even know me. Oh my gosh, how amazing is that? How
Right.
much identity can you give to a great great grandchild that you might not ever meet by
Yeah.
speaking into their life and providing the opportunity for them to thrive?
Yeah.
So,
And I just want to interject just
yeah,
2 seconds because the
yeah,
listener might have just heard you and thought you said all that what you just said about money. Like, look what
yeah,
my grandparents have built: money, businesses, assets, land, whatever. And Rachel didn't say anything about the money. She's
yeah,
talking about the characteristics, the mindset, the core values, the family mission. Because when those things are built, it has nothing to do with like buying your grandchild's loyalty,
yes.
right?
Yes, absolutely 100%. And if you're in a position of being able to say, here's what matters in life, and you can
Yeah.
give that to your great great grandkids,
Yeah.
and they don't have to go to their peers and figure out who they are, and they don't have to go invent a new truth, and they don't have to go invent a new worldview. They
Right.
can say, no, this is truth. And I
Yeah.
know that I can rely on my great great grandparents' wisdom and I can build upon that. Now you just have something that's so solid. I mean,
Yeah.
imagine if you had been given a letter, a note from your great great grandmother and father saying,
Yeah.
I love you and I believe in you and here's how I want you to be successful. I mean, even if it was, wouldn't that be amazing?
Yeah, it would just be incredible. It would be incredible.
So if we look at that and we recognize that there's a value in family, there's value in what we have to give to our kids and grandkids theoretically, values wise, and asset wise. But all of that, there's value in what we have to train them in and communicate to them and equip them for. Then we're in a position of saying, okay, it really is important for me to get clear on what I can do with this unit, this
Yeah.
trajectory of family. And now going somewhere matters because we're going to be stronger if we have a place to go together, if we're fighting together on the same team, rather than, you're doing your men's thing and I'm doing my women's thing and the kids are doing the kids' thing. And pretty soon before you know it, everyone's on their separate teams, but not the family team. And
That's right.
so when you really get clear on what the family is doing for the long term, you are in a position where you can just add and layer in so much strength. And Chaz, to your point about did you just write some values that didn't really mean anything, or did you really lock in and do the work? I think
Right.
the value of really locking in and making sure that not only are they aspirational values, they're not like, hey, I hope someday that, these will be words to describe us.
Right.
That's not really getting honest
Right.
with yourself about saying, what really have we, through our life experience, done battle and war to
Yeah.
accomplish in our life? And why does it actually matter? It's not just some random happy word that I chose because it felt good in the moment. It's
Yeah.
something that I've lived. And
Yeah.
when you've lived something, you have the capability to impart that to your kids
Yeah.
and grandkids.
Yeah. And again, I just echo your thoughts earlier of that part that, dropping something off or imparting something to them isn't just the letter or just the thing that you're handing them. It's the thing that you were doing with them
Yes.
first, and then when
Yes.
they took it from you, now they understood what to do with it. I can't help. This is a
Yes.
little. I think it's on topic, but it's a little grabby, a little tension grabby here. So I'll say it. But we may have talked about this when we first met. I can't remember, but one of the things that we decided to do pretty early in our marriage, when we were starting to have kids, was to not celebrate Christmas in the typical fashion, presents
Ooh.
and the deal. And so that seems like, oh, okay, cool, like no big deal. And and then my kids can do whatever they want. Our grandkids can do whatever they want, and they can. But to me, I look at this like through, not to, even with stuff like that. And it's like, no, no, no. I want my kids to understand why I chose to do that, not just because I didn't want to buy gifts. It's like, no, no, we don't do gifts because of X, Y, and Z reason. And
Mm,
instead, during the season, we're doing X, Y, and Z, or A, B, and C. And then that's now the culture of our family. This is how we
that's
celebrate
awesome.
this. So much so to where I've had conversations with my 11-year-old daughter and my 9-year-old daughter about them marrying a man who most likely grew up knowing who
Oh,
Santa
this is
Claus
awesome.
was,
Yeah.
getting presents for Christmas, and them having to get onto the same page with their husband about why it is that we do this the way that we do.
Mm,
Because most likely, and I'm not saying the families that don't do it like we do haven't thought about it, but most families just haven't thought about it. They just celebrate Christmas like we're taught. That's all. And so, however, if you've thought about it and you intentionally celebrate it like that, then cool. We've thought about it and we celebrate it intentionally like we do, and that's what I want to perpetuate. And so I've had that conversation with them even at 9 and 11 around, we're gonna have to have some conversations with your husbands, because they're gonna be like, wait, what are we doing, and why are we doing this? And then, oh yeah, by
I
the way,
love it.
their parents are gonna want to give your kids Christmas presents, because I had those conversations with your grandparents, my parents,
Mm.
and her parents, and our grandparents who still want to send Christmas gifts. And I'm like, no, there will be
Oh
no
my
gifts.
goodness. Oh, this is awesome. So I
But
don't
it's
know
a
how.
specific purpose. There's a reason. You know what I mean?
Yes, Chaz, I feel like the more I learn about you guys, the more I just love you guys. So I won't say that we're not celebrating Christmas, but I
Yeah, yeah.
will
We celebrate
say,
Christmas totally. My grandma
yeah.
actually said that this year. She was like,
Oh,
"Oh yeah, I forgot you guys don't celebrate Christmas." I'm like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, whoa. No, no,
just a
man,
different way.
we 100% celebrate
Yeah.
Christmas." What is Christmas? Oh, that's right, the birth of Jesus. Great. So we're gonna celebrate that, and not with
Awesome.
trash gifts that we don't need.
Awesome. Oh my gosh. Okay. So I love you guys and your family way more now. Okay. So what's so crazy is I think that, I mean, it really comes down to a willingness to think,
Yeah,
which thinking can be hard.
yeah,
I'm not going to lie. I think that as we go through the motions of life, we can realize that everything we think we're thinking and everything we do can just be a product of the thinking we were told to think. I don't know. I sound like Dr.
right,
Seuss at this point, but like, you know, I think so many times we realize that why did I do this?
yeah,
Why do I believe that?
that's
Why
right.
why am I doing this with my money? Why am I doing this with my time? Why
Yeah,
did I respond in that conversation that way that I just did? Well, part of it's
right.
habit, right? And where did the habit come from the previous time that you did that same thing? Well, where did that come the previous time you
Yep,
did it? And you created this rut or this trajectory in your life of, well, it's easy just to fall into that habit.
yep,
But in order to intentionally shift something, you have to first have a thought that I want to do this differently, which then gives you the opportunity to opt out of whatever it is, that system, that way of thinking that caused you to keep going down that same path.
that's right.
And I think when you're talking about this whole idea of extreme awareness,
Yeah,
extreme intentionality, and somebody shouldn't listen to this and just say, oh, the way to live an intentional life is to not celebrate Christmas traditionally. Well, that
right.
is the tactic that showed up in your life as a result
Sure.
of the strategy, as a result of the why. The why was the important
Hmm.
thing. The why was, who do we want to worship at
Right.
Christmas? Really? I mean, how are we going to position our lives in relationship to this season?
This
And so,
belief. Yep.
yeah. And so when you're saying the why, getting deep thinking on the why, willing to challenge our own comfort zone, our own beliefs, our
Right.
own system, our own the world about everything,
Our own
and the
family members.
why, yes, that is then what allows you to make different decisions. And I think it really comes down to being really gut level honest with yourself and then with your spouse. And you've got to be able to be on the same page with a spouse. And sometimes that takes a lot of work and sometimes it takes a little work depending on the
Right.
background and the habits and the, the belief system of that person as well. And Chaz, I'm not going to lie, we have had conversations with our 13-year-old daughter and our 5-year-old. Obviously, the 13-year-old was a little more involved, but we went camping, I want to say about a year ago. And the whole conversation came up at the point, what the criteria were to be able to marry the Marshall girls. And I'm not going to tell you the criteria, but it was just
That's awesome.
really fascinating that we realize that a lot of decisions that we make are on the fringes of what would be considered, common as well. And so I mean, there's this bell curve in any
That's
situation. You've
right.
got the bell curve of health, where you've got the extreme unhealth, you've got the extreme health, you've got the like average. Well, when you know that you're not just in the average, but you're like in the weird category of extreme on
Yep.
a lot of things, well, then that that makes you be multiple things. You realize that you have to have a lot of courage to
Yeah.
make those decisions that are countercultural. But secondly, you have to then understand, well, what is our philosophy? What is our perspective towards everyone who is not in that same way of thinking? And it
Right.
certainly should be, love and acceptance
Love,
and
empathy. Yep.
not judgment, not
Yep.
condemnation, not like, oh, you
Yep.
should know better.
Exactly.
But I think what's really interesting is that as you find yourself in that, choosing a different path, whether it's about Christmas, whether it's about, we mentioned the COVID time earlier. I mean,
Right.
whatever,
Oh
wherever
yeah.
you found yourself with that, if you find yourself in any category of making decisions that are not the average common, and I would say maybe that bell curve is going to flatten out a little bit and it's not going to be so polarizing, especially as you have stuff like, I don't know, media that's not being as controlled by major news outlets. You've got a lot more people with a voice who can
Right.
share information. But I think when you look at all of that, you realize that, yeah, there's going to have to be a lot of conversations around what it looks like to have somebody that then marries into your family and how are they going to make decisions in a way that's congruent with who they are. And man, I do not know how in the world anyone could possibly get married without really thinking through these things in advance. And it would be
Yeah.
so amazing for the strength of marriages if you could come into the conversation and say, here's my vision for family. Here's my vision for where I'm going in my life. Here's my vision for my health. Here's my vision for my money. Here's my vision for the way we're going to spend our time. Now, does that mean that you're judgmental towards another person
No.
if they're not there? But what if you could have that conversation in advance? What if your kids are kids? What if these kids could then talk about that stuff before they got married? You'd probably have a lot more common ground. I'm so
Yeah.
thankful. Lucas and I have been married almost 19 years. And
Wow.
we did not talk about any of these things because we didn't have clarity on any of these things when we got married.
That's right.
Thankfully, we've both chosen to challenge each other and grow in the same direction. And I am so thankful to the Lord for that.
Yeah. Julie and
So much
I,
so.
we got married in high school, so not not really,
Wow.
but
Yeah.
might as well have. And so yeah, no chance with us having any sort of vision other than I just knew at that time that I was going somewhere, and it was like hook your bootstraps up to me and let's just figure it out, you know.
Oh, that's
And she
awesome.
would probably describe it something like that as well. But
I love it.
I've just so appreciated your perspective, not just here, but just in all my interactions with you. You just have so much life around what you do. We didn't, I mean, you told your story just a little bit, but you got to really springboard your business on helping families figure all this out because of that scenario you went through, that almost death scenario that you
Hmm.
experienced. And I just appreciate your work that you're doing. So if the entrepreneur is listening right now and they're kind of swirling in their head around, okay, family legacy, 7 generations, this kind of feels like a lot. She's talking about their steps to this thing, family mission, got to write letters, like simplify it for us. What's the quick action that they can take to either start or connect with you to start this family legacy planning?
Awesome. Two things. I would say go get the book. Chaz, you're going to probably have a link in
Yeah,
whatever show notes, whatever place you're posting this. So go get the book, Seven Generations Legacy, and Chaz will have a link for you on that. And that is a wonderful starting spot. I think that that's going to get you thinking bigger than you've probably thought before on all of these matters, but also
yeah,
it's really practical. It's not
yeah.
it's not scary to the point of saying, let's, just talk over your head and give you a bunch of, legalese and financial
Yep.
jargon. It's not any of that. It's very down to earth. And you're
Yeah, and
going
as someone who actually has done, like, I mean, I already have an estate, I already have a trust, like I already have a lot of this stuff thought out. The book was actually really well done for even someone like me who still there's still steps for me to do, and a lot of times people in my position maybe think that they're already done,
to.
and so there was lots of value inside the book even for someone like me. It was a fantastic read.
Chaz, I appreciate you sharing that because I think the all of the people who've worked with us in coaching have done some kind of estate planning already and
Yeah,
already have some pieces in place. And so part of what they end up realizing is I've got pieces, but it's not all working together. Or I've got
yeah,
pieces that won't work for where I want to go. Or I've got some of the steps, but I need help to optimize other components. Or I haven't heard about infinite banking and family banking before. I really want to use that. We're using home equity credit or line of credit to be able to provide loans to family members, but there's another tool that I could use for that to do it more effectively. So
right.
I think what really happens is that we hear people who are resonating with this message because they do want something more for their family and for their wealth to live on past them. And they're in
Yeah,
a position of saying, I know there's a better way. I know that I can do this stuff better. How do I do that? And so almost everyone that we're talking to has done some planning on the legal side, some financial work already. Often they have financial advisors, and often almost everybody that we talk to says, I still feel like there's something missing.
yeah.
So you're going to find out about that by reading the book first. And if you read the book or you want to connect with me directly, you can go to sevengenerationslegacy.com/strategy call. You can book a call with me to really just brainstorm and problem solve your specific situation and figure out what those next steps would be to be able to take action. Probably not feeling comfortable with that just from a call like this today, but if you do, I would really just encourage you to grab the book. You can book that call. And Chaz, I love that you mentioned the workshop as well. So we do a workshop called the Legacy or Landmine Avoiding Wealth Wars workshop, and that's just really what Chaz is talking about. It's the first step to really getting clear on that family guidance system, your mission, your vision, your values, and your ideals. So we've got a lot of ways to serve people, but just jump into our world at Seven Generations Legacy with the book.
Yeah, we'll put the book link in the show notes as well as the link to book a call with Rachel and her team. But I would recommend, and I've found this in all of the things that I've done. There's people who listen who want more information, and then there's people who listen and go, I just want to take action, and I know that I need something like this. And so we'll put that book a call with Rachel. I would highly recommend that you do that if you're a quick action taker and you know that you need to put something in place because the next 100 years is up to you, whether you like it or not, actually. And I loved how you said each generation has to reform themselves as generation one. That's the first time I've heard you say that. I think that that's super powerful. And I'm going to start thinking like that to be able to teach my children to be generation one, not generation two, but generation one, which I think is just so powerful. So all that to say, Rachel, blessings to you and to your family. Thank you for being here and being such just an incredible steward of amazing information, but also just your spirit just resonates. It brings life wherever you go. So I just appreciate you doing that for the families that you're helping. Of course, that are families that are listening here today. Thank you for being here.
Chaz, this has been such an honor. Thank you for the work that you're doing, just for continuing to build kings and to help them to thrive and to win. You're doing a great job.
Thank you for listening to Driven to Win.
I hope that you were able to pull out a few nuggets to go apply into your business right away. More importantly, though, I hope that you're realizing that it takes more to be successful than just being by yourself, doing it all on your own, carrying the weight all by yourself. What I have realized, not only in my own journey from multiple businesses and multiple different industries, and now interviewing over 200 or 300 other very successful 7, 8, and 9-figure business owners, is that it's tough to do it alone. And so Gathering the Kings exists to bring together successful entrepreneurs. In fact, we are putting together 1,000 kings, specifically who are grateful but not done. We're intentionally assembling kings who fight tooth and nail for their business, family, and communities. And here's what we believe, that in the pursuit of excellence in those areas, that it ignites within us the responsibility to govern power and forge a lasting legacy. So if that relates and resonates with you, and you know that you need people around you, sharp, qualified,
other very successful business owners, I want you to go to gatheringthekings.com. I want you to take a look at what we're doing and see if it makes sense for you to be part of our pursuit to 1,000 kings. Talk soon.